Have you ever felt a pain that lingers, but no one can explain? The doctor said, "You're fine," but your body had kept whispering otherwise. In Buddhism, the body is not just flesh. It is a living scripture written by karma. Every ache is a karmic body signal, a message from your past, echoing through your skin and bones. You can treat your throat, but not the words you never spoke. You can soothe your spine, but not the burdens you've carried for others in silence. The Stoics once said, "Pain does not destroy us, but running from pain does." And the Buddha taught, if you don't listen to the body will one day make you listen, because the body never lies. It reflects the mind. This is the mind-body connection that even science now begins to see. Where you hurt is often where you've hidden the truth, your truth. So if you're tired and the pain has no name, no cause, no cure, this may be the moment to stop, not to escape it, but to hear it, to feel what your soul is trying to say. Because this body is not just yours, it is karma, still unfolding, still waiting to be understood. There was a man. He lived kindly, worked hard, always put others first, and almost never complained. But quietly, his body began to speak. His back hurt when he woke up. His throat tightened during important conversations. His chest felt like a stone. Each night before sleep, he went to doctors, ran tests. Everything came back normal, but he knew something deep inside was not right. The Buddha once said, when the mind is not at peace, the body cannot rest. The body becomes a living scripture, holding the marks of past karma, and where it hurts the most is often where you've silenced your own truth. The Stoics taught, it's not the event that disturbs us, but our judgment of it. And when those emotions are buried for too long, they don't disappear. They settle in the body. Tension becomes insomnia. Anger becomes inflammation. Carrying too much becomes chronic back pain. Modern science agrees. A 2020 study from Harvard found that people who suppress their emotions have higher risks of chronic inflammation, digestive disorders, and immune dysfunction. So the pain that seems without cause may, in fact, have a very deep cause. And then the man began to ask himself, am I carrying something that was never mine to hold? Is this pain trying to say what I've refused to feel? And from that moment, the problem began to appear, not in the test results, but in how he lived, how he thought, and what he never dared to face. From the moment he asked that question, everything began to surface, not as a new pain, but as if his body had finally found the courage to speak clearly. He started to realize each part of his body held something unresolved. His head was always tight, not from lack of sleep, but from thinking too much and feeling too little. The Buddha said, a wandering mind is the root of suffering. By living too much in logic, he had lost touch with intuition, the deeper voice within. Science now calls this a disconnection between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, when the mind overthinks but the heart never speaks. His throat felt dry every morning, not from the cold, but from years of swallowing the truth. Words unsaid, boundaries uncrossed, smiles forced through clenched teeth. From the Dhammapada, he who speaks not what needs to be said invites suffering into his own heart. His heart skipped sometimes, not from illness, but from unspoken grief. A name from the past could still make it falter. A study from Johns Hopkins showed that long-term resentment doubles the risk of heart disease because the sympathetic nervous system never gets to rest. His stomach often churned. Acid, bloating, discomfort, especially on the days he had to suppress his anger and smile anyway. Buddhism sees the stomach as the place where emotions are digested. When you can't digest your feelings, your body ends up doing it for you. His liver, always warm, slightly inflamed. Doctors said it might be food, but deep down, he knew it was old anger. Anger at others, anger at life, anger at himself. His spine ached every evening, not from aging, but from carrying weight that wasn't his, the burdens of family, the pressure to always be strong, to be the good one. Even when it broke him inside, his legs weakened. He could still walk, but something inside had stopped moving. He no longer had a reason to take another step. The Buddha said, "One without purpose is like a leaf drifting through the winds of karma." And then his skin began to break out. Rashes, itching, doctors blamed allergies. But he knew those were emotions finally pushing their way to the surface. The skin, the boundary between self and world, was screaming because he had no emotional boundary left. And then came the twist. He looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. It wasn't the wrinkles, it wasn't age, it was the eyes. They were empty. He saw a man living correctly, but no longer living truthfully. "I'm still breathing," he thought, "but I haven't truly lived in a very long time." But wait, you think this was the end of his pain? Number because what he was about to discover would not only change how he saw his body, but unravel a belief he had clung to for over 40 years. If you're still here, stay, because the most important part hasn't been said yet. As the pain lingered, he began looking for solutions, not within, but outside, because that's when the world teaches, if it hurts, fix it. If you're tired, rest. If you're anxious, distract yourself. So he started fixing: doctors, painkillers, supplements, warm water, better sleep, even breathing techniques. At first, it seemed to work. The body calmed, the mind softened. He thought he was okay, but then the pain returned, quietly, softly. His throat went dry again. His chest grew heavy again. The strange dreams, the restless nights, the sudden racing heart, all came back, as if they'd never left. He tried another path: meditation, yoga, self-help books, workshops on letting go, inner healing, manifestation. People told him to be grateful, to think positive, to trust the universe. He tried. He wrote gratitude lists, stuck affirmations on his mirror. "I deserve happiness," smiled through the numbness. And then the twist came. One morning during meditation, a quiet thought surfaced. "I've been trying to treat my pain as if it were something wrong, something to get rid of. But what if pain wasn't the enemy? What if it was the messenger delivering a truth he had long refused to read?" In Buddhism, suffering isn't something to escape. It's something to observe. Don't ask, "How do I stop this pain?" Ask, "Why is it here?" Thich Nhat Hanh. The Stoics never taught fake positivity. They taught presence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Modern science is catching up. Dr. Gabor Mate, trauma expert, says, most chronic illness comes from suppressed emotion. Brain scans show, when you meditate not to avoid but to feel, your insula, the empathy center, lights up. That's when the body begins to heal, from the inside. So he sat, not to erase the pain, but to listen. He stopped forcing himself to feel better. He just allowed himself to feel whatever was there. And for the first time, when the pain returned, he didn't react. He breathed. He stayed. And something unexpected happened. The pain didn't leave, but it no longer scared him. It was just there, like a child who had been abandoned, finally allowed to be seen. But you think that's the end? Number. Because one ordinary morning, he stumbled upon a truth that shook him to his core, a truth he had never dared to question in over 40 years of being good. And in that moment, the mask began to fall, not from others, but from himself. One morning, as while making tea, his hand paused before the mirror beside the stove. It wasn't the wrinkles, it wasn't the gray hair, it was the eyes. Those eyes felt foreign, distant, empty. And then a thought pierced through the fog, clear and sharp. I've lived kindly all my life, but I've never lived truthfully. No one said it to him. He said it to himself. He realized that everything he'd done right was in some way a way to hide from rejection, to hide from the fear of not being loved, to hide from being called selfish. If he dared to live for himself, his body pain was not only karma from the past, but the echo of roles he'd performed for decades. In Buddhist teachings, there's a term called present ignorance, not past life karma, but suffering born from how we live now, without awareness. He started looking back. His older brother, he took responsibility for the family, thinking, I'm the strong one, I must carry it. His wife, he stayed silent through her betrayals, afraid to lose her, and in that silence, he lost himself. His son, the one who left this world too early, he never cried. He told everyone, I'm fine. But deep inside, a part of him had died with that child. Science calls this chronic emotional disconnection, a pattern often found in good people who don't know how to cry, don't know how to get angry, don't know how to let go. They don't fall into depression, they live in a controlled emptiness. And then he cried, for the first time in nearly 30 years, not from pain, not from grief, but because at last he had looked at himself without defense. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha said, the wise are not those who never weep, but those who know when to let tears fall and never forget who they truly are. The Stoics never said men must be strong. They said, to know who you are is the bravest act of all. He realized that all those years of being kind were real, but not enough. Kindness cannot replace authenticity, and no healing can begin until you remove the final mask. I'm fine, he smiled, though his eyes were still wet. For the first time, he felt his body breathe, fully, not because the pain was gone, but because he no longer needed to hide. But that was only the beginning. Because once you see the truth begins to look back. And the hardest part isn't facing others. It's this. Can you sit with yourself or in silence? After facing the truth, he didn't feel lighter. In fact, something darker began to surface. A shadow, and the one he'd hidden beneath kindness, sacrifice, and silence, was now stepping into the light. He felt anger, but didn't know who to blame. Was it his father, the man who never hugged him, never said, I'm proud of you? His mother, who always said, be strong, don't cry? Or life itself, for giving him so much to carry and never once asking, are you tired? Number, deep down, he was angry at himself because he never lived the life he truly wanted. He turned himself into a safe version, someone who wouldn't upset others. And in doing so, he forgot he was human too. The Buddha taught, we harm ourselves, we imprison ourselves, and then we search for liberation. The greatest enemy is the untamed mind. His mind was now at war. One part wanted to rebel, to scream at his wife, "Have you ever truly listened to me?" To ask his friends, "Would I still matter if I stopped helping you?" To whisper to his parents, long gone, "I needed a hug too." But another part was afraid that if he showed his truth, no one would love him, that if he stopped being right, he wouldn't know who he was anymore. Psychologists call this the conflict between the real self and the ideal self. It creates chronic anxiety, silent depression, and restless sleep, because the body no longer knows which voice to follow, the quiet truth inside, or the performance he's perfected for years. The Stoics wrote, "We suffer not from others' faults, but from clinging to roles that don't belong to us." Then came a quiet twist. One afternoon, he sat in meditation. No music, no guidance, no goal of awakening, just sitting with himself. And in that silence, he heard something strange, not with his ears, but with his heart. A voice, soft and ancient. "You don't have to be right anymore. You just have to be real." He didn't know where it came from. Maybe it was the voice of the child he once was, maybe a whisper from a past life, or maybe what the Buddha called the true knowing, the part of us untouched by fear, pride, or shame. He didn't cry, he didn't smile, he just sat and felt his presence, fully, no fixing, no effort, no mask. But you think that was it? Number. Because sitting is one thing, but standing up and changing is the real test. And in that moment, a decision began to form, not in the mind, but in the heart. After everything, he sat on the old wooden chair. Sunlight filtered through the leaves. No one around, no music, no prompts. Just one quiet question rising from within. If today were my last chance to live truthfully, what would I do? He thought of big things: quitting his job, walking away, writing a memoir, moving to the mountains. But instead, he stood up, very slowly. He walked into his room, opened the closet, took out the old shirt his wife once said looked messy. He put it on, looked into the mirror, and smiled. That was the twist. The decision to change didn't come through dramatic action. It began with a small act that had once been silenced. He stepped outside, no phone, no schedule, no urgency, just walking, as if his legs deserved air, deserved to carry him not for anyone else, but for himself. Down the village road, he saw a child fall. The mother scolded harshly. The child's eyes, filled with fear, shame, and the quiet swallowing of tears. It looked exactly like his eyes as a boy. He walked over, knelt down, said nothing, just reached out his hand. The child took it, and as the mother raised her voice again, he gently said, "It's all right, sister. He just needs someone to listen." In that moment, he realized change isn't destroying everything. It's choosing again the things I once abandoned. The Buddha taught, one right thought is like a lotus in the mud. With enough mindfulness, it rises and blooms. Science calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire through small, meaningful acts. A hug, a deep exhale, a single number, a moment when you don't smile, just to please. The Stoics said, want to change the world? Start with how you get out of bed in the morning. And he had begun. No drama, no announcement, no hashtags. That evening, when his wife asked, "Why that shirt?" he didn't stay silent. He simply said, "Because today I wanted to be myself." Then he poured more tea and said nothing more. That night he wrote, not a journal, but a letter to the child inside him. Thank you for not leaving. From now on, we live together. If you've ever felt like you were living right, but not living true, pause for a day. Don't do anything big. Just choose one small thing that is truly yours, not theirs. And if you think change is a leap, wait for what comes next. Because the hardest part isn't change, it's this. How do you stay true to yourself in a world that doesn't want you to? The tightness in his throat had softened, not because of medicine, but because he had finally spoken what he had swallowed for so long. His back no longer ached each afternoon, not because of massage, but because he no longer carried what wasn't his. His heart still skipped now and then, but it no longer scared him because he knew it was beating with truth. That day he didn't heal everything, but he stopped pretending. And in that moment, his body stopped screaming. It simply stood beside him. Because the body was never the enemy. It was always telling the story the mind had forgotten to hear. The inner child, ignored for decades, was now being seen, not with logic, but with presence, not through advice, but through an inner embrace. The Buddha said, "One who truly sees the body is learning to love themselves, and only one who loves themselves can truly let go." If you've seen yourself in this story, pause, look into your body, and gently ask, today, have I lived in truth with this body? If you've ever stayed silent thinking, no one wants to hear me, try writing one sentence, not for anyone else, just so you can hear yourself. Because the body can endure for years, but the soul cannot. But if you think the journey ends once you start living your truth, it doesn't. The body is only a mirror. There's still something else, quietly shaping every decision, every wound, every relationship, the mind, and that is what we'll begin to listen to in the next story.